here.
Oh, another Sicilian defense, and this time Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is heading towards the knight off.
Okay, his speciality.
Speciality. But of course, favorite of Kasparov, of Fischer, some legendary world champions, and okay, ooh, the players repeated the moves there just for a moment. There is a famous knight-off draw of White's bishop dropping back, getting hit, but of course, these players want to fight, and we're back towards the main line. Slightly different pawn structure, Tanya, to the other knight-off, but it's going to be equally fighting.
Yeah, this is going to be quite a fiery game. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave decided not to play the knight off in the first game, went for the Sveshnikov with 2 knight c6. Then Magnus is the one who goes for the knight off, and Maxime says, you can't do that against me. I'm the knight off expert here. So it is a day of the Open Sicilian, and I'm loving it already. I think we are going to have opposite side castling in this one. It will become a race to the other's king. Queen d2 does hit, while Maxime will put the bishop on b7, develop with the knight forward to d7. The queen lands on c7. We're going to see some thematic moves here.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot from this game in terms of where to put your pieces for both sides in this type of structure. Black is super flexible, and I would argue that Black is much more flexible in this kind of branch of the knight-off than Magnus was in the previous game, where we saw him fix the center very early on. We will likely see opposite side castling, as Tanya mentions, but Magnus, he's hesitating. It does look like Black has a ready-made attack against the white king, throwing pawns forward. If you kind of prematurely commit your king to that flank, maybe he'll start taking a leaf out of Maxime's book by throwing pawns forward himself first. And are you surprised, Tanya? Because if Magnus plays 1e4, he's hoping for the Sicilian knight-off, surely.
Yeah, he is, but Maxime's not one that's afraid. This is an opening that Maxime has played all his life against the very best players in the world. So it doesn't matter who he's playing, how well they're prepared. Maxime really knows all the ins and outs of this opening. So it's going to be quite an interesting middle game battle. What does Magnus have in mind against Maxime's knight-off? For now, Maxime starts heading on the king side. The g pawn has been stalled. You really don't want to pick up the b4 pawn as white right now, opening up, not only giving black a b file to fight on, but also tactics with the d pawn moving forward. And watch out for that bishop on f8 suddenly becoming really active, and the d pawn and the knight putting pressure on the central e4 pawn.
Yeah, definitely don't get greedy here. You can actually take this pawn in 2 different ways. You can also advance your knight to hit the black queen, but this would also be inadvisable because the white knights now are just terrible on these 2 squares, a4 and b4. And similar ideas to yours there, Tanya. Either the black rook can use the b file, or maybe black can even strike out in the center. This bishop looks extremely strong. The tactics will favor black, while the white king is so exposed in the middle of the board. And of course, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave being an expert, he won't play a move like pawn to h6, and quite slow move there, unless he's hoping for white to take the bait. This pawn is poisoned, and I'm expecting Magnus to kind of be consistent. He's lifted his queen up, he's got ready to castle, he's pushed pawns on the king side, so castle queen side makes a lot of sense here right now. And the only thing that confuses me in this type of position, or at least the main thing, a lot of things confuse me here, but the main thing is this knight. Is it a strength or is it a weakness? It's kind of on an outpost because it can't be hit by a pawn, but it could also get kind of trapped on the edge of the board if you're not careful, not influencing the center.
The one thing good about that knight, David, is that it stops the pawn avalanche on the queen side. The a5, a4 is not going to happen anytime soon. So it kind of delays the counterplay that black has against the potentially castle king on the queen side. A knight to a4, it can become a target, but while Maxime will set that up, Magnus needs to find his play either in the center or the king side based on where Maxime decides to place his king. So it often becomes a race and a question of momentum. Who gets to each other's king first?
Yeah, and okay, I'm going to ask you about the clock this time. Magnus, he's only spent a couple of minutes, but it is slightly worrying that he's thinking, again, he's fighting on his opponent's home territory. This time Vachier-Lagrave with the black pieces. This is his bread and butter. And again, he's thinking, Magnus, he could have predicted this type of position. How surprising is this?
That's the thing, right? In these kind of knight-offs, even if you're slightly unsure about the move order, it's a good idea to slow down, because every move, once again, is a high responsibility move in an opening like knight-off. You could end up facing big troubles if you're inaccurate. Magnus decides to go for long castle immediately, and now for Maxime, does he continue with development, improving the bishop? He starts with improving his knight, brings it on to e5.
The speed is impressive here from Vashiligrav. He's prepared. He's for sure studied this position before. This has been cooked up in his home laboratory.
He's been playing this for about 500 years now.
Yeah. If there's something about the Najdorf, if you have any questions, ask Maxim. He will reveal everything.
I think for anyone watching, if they want to play the Najdorf, if that's an opening that they're looking at, Maxim's the guy. You've got to watch his masterpieces, just the way he develops the pieces, how he often sacrifices material for the initiative in these kind of openings. And I think Maxim and Anish, these are the two players who we've seen play the Najdorf just to perfection.
Yeah, and Jan Nepomniachtchi, who used to play it kind of solely the Najdorf, now he's branched out. He mostly plays the Petrov defense. But yes, this branch of the Sicilian, named after Argentinian Grandmaster Miguel Najdorf, it's combative, it's a favorite of several world champions, and it's not a coincidence. Black has such a flexible position. You keep all the pieces on the board, it's so dynamic, and that's all you need when you want to outplay your opponents.
Did you ever delve into the Najdorf yourself with Black?
Yes, but not very successfully. I quickly gave up that experiment, Tanya. How about yourself?
I do love playing the Sicilian, but more into the Sveshnikov territory. For me, Najdorf is just so much theory and so much memorization of moves. And again, you have to be so accurate and understand these tactical dynamics. And people think that the Najdorf is extremely aggressive, but it's got a really strong strategic positional foundation as well.
That's right. Black does have two pawns in the center. This is something we've discussed in previous days. Because Black has a pawn on the E file and D file, you're the one who's breaking out, and you're the one with a very healthy pawn structure. Actually, endgames often favor Black due to that factor. So yeah, solid foundation, but the memory work. I think that's
that's the hard part.
We heard it from Magnus. You know, work ethic. It's a big issue for a lot of chess players, and if you have to memorize 100 lines, kind of 200 lines, then it becomes less appealing, these openings.
Yeah, memory is definitely not my big forte. So no Najdorf for me, but it means as a commentator, we really enjoy these openings. And so much has happened already. Look at Maxim using those two pawns on the queen side. He's clamped down on the three pawns that Magnus has. The b4 pawn looks really strong, but the disadvantage of that, every pawn move has its own set of consequences. You give some squares to white's pieces. The light squares around it, the a4 and the c4 square. I think for Black, David, again, it will be around the thematic central break of trying to get a successful d5 in.
Yeah, and the question is, when, Tanya? If not now, maybe now? What happens if Black does break in the center? We're talking about these two central pawns for Black. These pawns giving a lot of cover for the Black king, first of all, but also a lot of flexibility to break out. And it goes against...
he does it!
Yeah, it goes against what we're taught, opening the position when your opponent's king is slightly safer, when your king is sitting in the middle uncastled. But he does it. I think he's ready, because pawn takes pawn here would be met by a knight jump, and these two Black knights just control everything. Threatening to take, maybe threatening to jump into a nice hole in the opponent's camp. I think Magnus here has to be really careful how he treads. He does attack this Black knight, very logical, and if the Black knight moves, maybe he's aiming to block up the center, and this position would get really, really sharp in the next few moves. This Black knight, of course, lacking squares, you can trade off a set of pieces, but the knight now forced to some ugly retreats. Some ugly posts here.
It's so complicated, this position already, and so much tension in the center that we have on the live board. Magnus with his last move threatening the knight. I like your idea of retreating to a square where you actually attack that bishop on f4. And Black's own bishop on d7, very often it can actually move to b5, offering a trade, even at the cost of the pawn. It has to be timed really well, obviously not right now, but to open up the a line. So there are these ideas that exist. What on earth just happened?
Vashiligrav has sacrificed a piece out of the blue, totally unexpected. Let's do a quick action replay. His knight was attacked. More positional players, more conservative players would have retreated their knight, but he jumps in, gives up a whole piece, and he lands another knight in the center of the board. It's a piece for 2 pawn sacrifice. He's only sacrificed 1 point, but this knight is going to jump into some nice squares. What do you think, Tanya?
That's the thing, right, David? Maxim knows all these tricks and tips that exist in the Najdorf, these tactical ideas of giving up a piece. It's such a committal decision, especially when you're playing against the world's best player.
Just looking for some tempting moves. I really want to bring my bishop out to attack the white queen, but the problem is I would drop the pawn on g7. So maybe he could start by pushing this pawn forward. It looks ugly. Never play f6, then Feingold says. But here suddenly it does have this solid foundation of bringing this bishop out next move. You could hint that you might want to step forward in the center later. Again, time that well. But yeah, fascinating position. I mean, the move I'm most attracted to is knight jumping in, attacking this rook, attacking this pawn. But yeah, he's hesitating for a reason. I think this would be the human approach. We see the bar react. Let's see what Maxim has. A piece sacrifice, and then he thinks, like you say, it's slightly odd.
But I think that's also because he believes in the dynamics of the position. He believes that there is compensation. You can't calculate these lines to the very end. It's not a concrete line. It's just playing for the dynamic balance, which is piece activity, which is the dark squared bishop jumping onto c5 at the right time, hitting the white queen, which is all these squares around white king. So sort of like a long-term compensation. Maxim is not going to regain the material anytime soon. David, he goes with a similar idea to f6, defending the g7 pawn, but in a different way. He lines it up with the rook, and bishop c5 is coming next.
It is coming next, but he now has lost the right to castle kingside, and relinquishing that idea, I think, might long-term come back to haunt him, Maxim Vachiligorov. And the reason I quite liked f6 here is not because it was necessarily threatening any pawn pushes, it was because it controlled white's pieces, it took squares away. And, okay, still pressure on Magnus how to answer black's bishop coming out with a gain of tempo next move. Bishop c5 will hit the white queen. But, yeah, there are a few ways to stop that. And Magnus does have a lot of time to deal with this latest twist, this latest turn.
And when you play this kind of an opening and this kind of a sequence with the black pieces, again, you have to be so precise in the follow-ups, because otherwise you'll just land up down material in the position. And yes, for Magnus Carlsen, the task is clear. He needs to stop the most immediate threat. You said there are several ways to do it. One comes to my mind: get that knight from b2 to the center of the board. Knight d3. I not only control the c5 square, but also the e5 square, and overprotect the f2 square.
I love it. Multi-purpose moves are the most effective in chess, covering the c5 square and this one, of course, and like you say, just everything, controlling everything. And also, if you get greedy later, you might as well at least hint that you can take a pawn. And now I think Maxim will be regretting not having his pawn on f6, because suddenly a launch pad has appeared. I don't see any drawbacks behind this move at all. The only thing I can see that maybe justifies Maxim's decision to play rook g8 would be to, while Magnus jumps forward, I was going to say to jump to kind of push his g-pawn in order to try and get his bishop on the long diagonal, a really promising diagonal. But okay, Magnus does not allow this. He first jumps in with his knight. And what is the idea? He's got something up his sleeve, surely, to meet bishop c5, attacking this white queen. What is it? He only has one safe square. If he drops back, the black knight might come and start forking.
Queen hits 7.
Yeah, maybe it's this. Queen to h7, hitting the undefended rook. Magnus has seen deeper.
Magnus on his queen moves. He knows how to land them at the right place. And bishop c5, queen d3, I really like the idea, because that's the added drawback, right, of that rook moving from h8 to g8, that you lose control of the h7 square.
Yeah, just really clever play there from Magnus. And both players playing pretty quickly, despite the fact it's got a bit wild. White with black there, sorry, with the piece sacrifice. Do you think it was a case of Maxim knowing that this piece sacrifice existed? Maybe it was in his notes, he was trying to remember, but the details are a bit fuzzy. Maybe he hasn't looked at it for a long time.
Yeah, very possible. And it could be an idea that existed in a similar but different position. And the thing with knight off is that small differences are actually really big differences. And here he goes into a think right after sacrificing a piece, and it could backfire. But it's still early to call, David, because there is still a lot of activity for black. I like the move bishop to c5. I think we're going to see that on the board simply through process of elimination. I'm kind of struggling to find another active move for black instead of bishop c5.
Yeah, if he hasn't brought the black knight to c3 so far, he's probably never going to do that. So Maxim in calculation mode. That's his calculation pose, where he's just counting bishop c5, queen d3, all those moves. But yeah, there we go. It's on the board. Magnus, will he retreat his queen? As we're expecting, the fact that paused queen sacrifice. Magnus Carlsen surprising us, not retreating to a passive square, gives up his queen, and then Maxim gives the queen straight back. That was action replay because the dust has settled now, but I mean, the players, they're so good, they're another level. They saw all of that, and it wasn't obvious at all. The queen retreating to d3 was the move we expected, the only safe square, but Magnus, of course, surprised us. Queen takes knight, giving up his queen for 2 pieces. Knight takes d7 now, so he's got a bishop and a knight for that queen. All sorts of threats, such as hitting this bishop. Maxime did not even hesitate, giving the queen back for the knight and a rook this time. Let's do some counting. Tanya, help me out. Mathematics, unlike Maxime, is not my strong forte here.
So black's got a rook, David, and how many pawns is that? That's 4, 7 to 5. So a rook and 2 pawns, that's 7 points for black, and white's got a bishop and a knight, so 6 points for white here. Doing the math, black does have an edge, but if white is able to get the minor pieces active, I think it's going to be white with the advantage here. You want to develop your bishop, you want to develop your rook, and line it all up against black's king. Get that knight into the center of the game, either via a4 or c4 to e5. I would prefer white despite that 1-point mathematical deficit.
Yeah, and I think here it's just the fact that the pawns are not rolling anytime soon. This looks like a strong passed pawn, but it might get hit. The other pawns won't be joining it for a while, and it's more about the pieces. White simply has a knight and bishop, 2 very strong pieces, especially on those outposts you mentioned, Tanya, and black just has 1 rook, so 2 versus 1 in terms of piece play. And still have to be careful before the pawns roll, but Magnus should be pretty happy. He does park his knight on a beautiful square, beautiful outpost, trying to come in.
You guys seem very excited about what's happening on the board right now. These two look so calm. What's happening on the inside of them? Are they sort of, bursting as well? That's why they're there and we're here, Kaya. Because they know exactly what they're doing and the speed with which that queen sacrifice happened and the return of the queen sacrifice happened. And David, for me, that was the shocking moment. We kind of went through it, but I still want to go back and understand a little bit for everyone watching as well. Then why did Maxime have to give up the queen at that point?
Yeah, this is the current position. Let's backtrack. We saw Magnus give up his queen just for 1 knight and then a bishop. But yeah, the big question here, Tanya, is why not keep the black queen? She feels a bit uncomfortable stared down by a rook right now. She took this white knight, but if she moved out of the way defending her bishop, what is next for white? It's a mystery. For example, we could maybe just see a trade and the white knight come forward. Here we would see a weird material imbalance of queen for 3 pieces. Black has a queen, white has a knight and 2 bishops. So again, 9 for 9 there pretty much, but it's all about the activity of the pieces. Maybe he was just tapping in and the black king is still not entirely safe. So instead of this material imbalance, he goes for a different one where he's actually material up. But yeah, if you can have a queen, I think most, 99% of us would take the queen.
But that's really nicely pointed out and explained, David, that those 3 pieces against black's king with the rooks also joining in the open line, that's something that Maxime did not want because white would be the one with the initiative in that position. So instead he decided none of that, gives the queen back. Mikhail, that was awesome to watch. Wow.
Yeah, this is another level. Those types of decisions, firstly, you've got to see that you can sacrifice the queen. That takes a few minutes. You've got to evaluate. That's really difficult. And then you've got to calculate. And these players played it in 30 seconds. And, of course, really, really strong moves. No big mistakes. And I think, Kaya, you mentioned also on the camera, the players looking really calm. I think in a lot of sports, in a lot of top kind of elite sports, they try and control their breathing. They might not actively do it, but you can't kind of have a high heart rate and play a long kind of rapid game like this at high level. At some point, you have to calm yourself down. You have to be focused. You have to make rational decisions. If you get too excited, too emotional, then things collapse.
So do you think they are using that? I know Magnus previously has sort of been into yoga and meditation and stuff like that. Do you think he is actively using breathing?
I know a lot of players do. Gukesh, I think, meditates.
Vidit.
Eric Geisy, Vidit.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. But I also think about these top players, right? Especially the top 10 players, they really thrive in these high pressure situations. To be the best in the world, I think your best has to come out in situations like these. You can't really get nervous and let your nerves get the better of it. And we see that time and time again with Magnus, also with Maxime. There's absolute fire. All hell has broken loose in the position. And we're all freaking out as commentators, as an audience enjoying it, but there's no reaction. Because in their mind, it's just, I think it just really brings out their ability to control themselves and to calm themselves down and just really the best in them. And that's why they're champions.
Yeah.
And they probably enjoy it as well, right? When it is fire on the board. I was actually going to ask right before Magnus sacrificed his queen if it was sort of giving Maxim an edge that he had sacrificed a piece because, well, if I lose this game, then at least I played something beautiful.
That's true. A lot of players, it takes the pressure. The opponents can't deal with that. Players like Dubov, who's always throwing pawns away, it's like less responsibility every move, and your opponent is terrified they'll fall victim to a brilliant victory, a brilliant game.
So again, is it a mind game by Magnus then to sacrifice himself so he sort of gets, levels the mind games again?
Yeah, and one secret I will reveal about Magnus, just from knowing him, chatting with him, and watching his games, is he loves to sacrifice his queen as long as he gets 2 pieces in return and some kind of positional compensation. He'll happily give his queen away. He kind of gets a kick out of it. I'm not sure exactly why. It seems to work for him, not for me, unfortunately. Those queen blunders. But yeah, he loves going for that. And I think Maxim Vachiligorov as well, he'll never back down from a challenge. And the fact he saw the counter-sacrifice, giving back the queen and a roughly level position, really shows his class.
Yeah, and it's also about just what's happening on the board. If they feel like that's the best alternative, that's the best option, so concrete, just calculated till the end. Neither of these players wants to go into a passive position, wants to defend long term, so they always go for these combative options. It's very interesting what you said about playing beautiful chess, playing these sacrifices, and even if it goes wrong, thinking that, you know what, you get the beauty prize. But I think it was Magnus who said that the beauty prize is not good enough. Just playing beautiful chess and justifying it to yourself if you end up losing, that at least you played a beautiful game, just doesn't make the cut. Yeah, that's the sports aspect to the game that we know Magnus loves.
Yeah, but he's getting older. He's won everything. So now I think the only thing left is beautiful games. He's definitely got his legacy on his mind. I think he wants to win a few more stunners before he retires.
What's more important, David, to play a beautiful game or to get the win in? What would you rather? Play a really nice game and then just mess it up in one move and then the result doesn't go your way, but you do get a brilliancy prize for that, or just to play a really crap game but win in the end?
I mean, I'm not known for my beautiful games, so easy answer. It's all about those 100-move grinds that send people to sleep, my opponent's yawning, and definitely no beauty prizes there. It's all about the result. How about you, Tanya?
I would take the win. I would take the win because chess is such a cruel game, right? I think at every level we've had this, we've been so proud of our play for 40 moves, and then you make one inaccuracy, and it all just goes down the drain. None of it really matters, and it's heartbreaking, and nobody cares about how beautiful the game was. So yeah, definitely taking the win. Yeah. And this one, will it be a winner in this game, or will we have a third draw? What do you think?
This likely right now. I'm not sure. I mean, the evaluation bar slightly prefers white, but I'm not sure in practical terms whose position is easier to play. White has the 2 bishops, which usually triumph over a rook, but look at that massive black pawns on the king side. White is doing a good job right now. Magnus is kind of prioritizing blockading. Those white bishops are blockading the advance of black's pawns, but if they ever get motoring, if the black pawns ever cross into the white half, then the tables could turn. So it's not clear what next. I really like what Maxim's been doing. He's just kind of sitting on the position right now, and he's making it hard for White to improve.
Making it hard for White to improve, and the one way I thought White could improve is snap up one of the pawns. I was thinking about just bishop takes that pawn on the king side, and then I realized that, wait a second, black can actually pin that bishop on with rook h8, and it might not work, but there's actually a counter trick in that position, David, because I think rook h8, we have bishop h6 on the board, by the way. I thought rook h8 runs into bishop g5.
Yeah, a check, and this bishop, of course, can be taken, but the white rook can now capture the black rook on h8 with impunity. The problem is, maybe this black pawn is starting to roll. I mean, this is such a crazy position. How is the evaluation bar still almost in the center? White is a bishop up. I don't understand, but maybe these pawns are rolling.
That's crazy, right?
A bishop for a pawn, and yet the evaluation bar says still should be a draw with best play. Maybe the black king comes, the black pawn rolls. But, I mean, it would be so hard for Maxim Vachiligorov to go for this, a whole bishop down. If he plays this move, rook to h8, he is superhuman. He's another level, and he would be in top form.
Yeah. I look at eval bars in these kind of positions, and I just give up on life. Chess is hard.
Chess is hard. It's the most natural move here, rook h8, but yeah, I don't see him going for this. Once you see bishop to g5 check, getting out of the way, then taking this rook next, you stop calculating, no matter how good a player you are. But okay, what's he going to go for? It looks like he's about to move. Maxime, 4 minutes each.
He's reaching out, but if not rook to h8, then white just anyway falls back with the bishop, activating his own rook, and Maxime does go for counterattack against the other bishop on e2.
And this bishop will most likely move. It doesn't necessarily need to move. I'm not sure if it's actually a threat to take it, because white will have this bishop g5 check idea that we pointed out a moment ago. But of course, if a piece is attacked, first instinct, run. Or defend it, but the bishop gains time against black's rook, which will go back.
Black's rook has to watch out, right? Because you want to stay connected to that g5 square that you pointed out earlier. Bishop g5 is also a threat in the position, so expecting Maxime to move the rook along the g line.
Somewhere. He's fought for 3 or 4 safe squares. He drops back, hitting the white bishop. Very logical, but the evaluation bar again heading in white's favor. I mean, I would take the bishop pair all day long, just like our viewer there in the chat. But those black pawns, if they do roll, just one more move. If black can ever get f4 successfully, it's a full 360 turn. So the stakes are high.
And that's what Maxime's relying on, right? Those two central pawns. Because without that, it's pretty much game over. So those two pawns keep the white bishops tied down to the defense of them rolling forward. But Magnus, he's jumping around, shuffling around with the bishop. First threatening a check on one side and now entering from the other side. Bishop c5 in the air. The rook jumping onto h7. Joining the attack. There can be fire against black's king, even though there's such few material on the board.
Yeah, after all, white does, kind of forgetting pawns for a second, white does have 3 pieces against black's 2, and the 2 bishops are great attacking pieces.
Rook h7, rook f7, now mating net.
Mating net around the black king, potentially. Let's just show that type of idea. If Maxime is careless, of course he won't be, but if he just plays
Magnus reacts here.
Ooh, maybe he's missed something. If Maxime were to just make a random move, let's say he repeats, then the white rook could come in and behind, and, okay, the valuation bar reacts, but this would have been a mating pattern. At least black now entering the center. Whoops, my arrows are crazy today. But pawn to f4 in the air, still not immediately a threat, but white goes behind. He's going for those ideas you mentioned, Tanya.
He is, and now f4 is actually met by this deadly check, which will end up winning one of the 2 pawns. So if you go f4, you give a check, the king has to fall back, and then the f4 pawn. Well, he goes for f4.
Whoa. Really dastardly trap here.
So what move are we looking for now?
Magnus will give the check. I'm pretty sure this was his plan, but I think here he will realize that this pawn is poisoned. He cannot allow a check on this g1 square. If the bishop is distracted, then black suddenly would turn things around. And we talked about 2 bishops. 2 rooks also know how to deliver checkmate, and this would be game over. Magnus, I think, has missed this. Maxime, to spot this instantly, shows his calculation skills, but also just how strong he is tactically.
Tactically, just so sharp. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave finding this kill zone for white's king with just seconds on the clock. And I think it's now that Magnus realizes that rook h5 just doesn't get him what he wants, which means that actually Maxime has managed to push the pawns ahead. And we've got the eval bar saying that Magnus is winning, but if you're playing this position from a practical standpoint, once black gets a successful f4 in, you start sweating.
Yeah, the main thing going in Magnus's head is not that I'm better, I have an advantage, it's I missed something. That is the key now for Magnus, and he does give this check, but if he takes this pawn, he'll lose. He doesn't take the bait there, and he finds the best move, gaining time against black's rook. That being said, black's pawns are pretty impressive right now, so if black can survive the next few moves and get them rolling, then Maxime still has a chance. Again, such high quality play, both players seeing everything right now, still 0 blunders this whole match.
Magnus finding bishop b6, just incredible. Also, not only just attacking that rook on d8, but you want to guard that g1 square, not allow black's rooks to line up on the 8th rank. And these bishops can start sort of coordinating together to start hitting the black rook. Rook d7, you can ask more questions. Bishop to b5, it's just not so easy for the rooks to feel comfortable once the bishops start coming after them. But he takes a pawn, but doesn't this allow...
Ooh, and the evaluation bar is getting confused here. The black pawns are rolling. I think there was no mating net there because white would have eliminated the remaining black pawn, the pawn on b4, and white's king would have had some breathing space. So Maxime, he's going all in. He's thrown all of his chips behind his pawns here in the center, and they're rolling.
But it's the Black King, David. There can be a mating net with the two bishops and the rook trying to line up against Black's king, but I'm not seeing it.
The good thing for Magnus is these pawns, they're rolling, but he can give up one of his bishops for them, and he should be relatively safe there. He plays the most natural check, but the evaluation bar says no. How frustrating is this? The Black King has only got 2 safe squares. It gains time against the White Rook. And now, does Maxime make a new queen? No, he doesn't. Crazy move here. Don't take this Black Rook. Black will make a new queen. This Rook is poisoned, and the other Black pawn is going to roll.
I love that move by Maxime. Just offering his rook, you can't take it. And as you said, it defends the e-pawn, wanting to go e6 next. And the bar is just going crazy. There's a bit of yo-yo going on, and nobody knows what's happening.
Yo-yo, YOLO, it's one of those games, one of those positions in Tanya. I'm just going to jump in very quickly to point out a crazy tactic that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave actually missed just a few turns ago. Here he played rook to e1, a move we really like, defending this pawn. He could have played the insane rook to d3. This isn't me, don't worry, it's the computer. Rook to d3, and Black makes a new queen. You simply give up your rook to cut the connection with the bishop and this promotion square. Watch out for this to arise later. The evaluation bar says still complicated, but yeah, it's just that type of position. Tricks all over the shop.
That's stunning. Rook d3. Oh, what a move. But you can't fault Maxime for not finding that one. And now Magnus lines it up against the f2 pawn. Black can start advancing the e pawn. If there's a possibility for Magnus to sacrifice one of his bishops for the pawn, I think White will actually have the advantage because you've got these 3 pawns on the queen side. So Maxime needs to keep these 2 pawns alive and keep the pieces distracted defending them.
Yeah, maybe each Black pawn will cost White one of his bishops. And then we'd see a crazy scenario with White having a rook and 3 pawns versus 2 Black rooks. But yeah, it's so hard to play this position from both sides.
I would just rather be me commentating on this. Good answer, Tanya. Very good.
I'd rather be at home watching on the sofa. This is a crazy position. There's just no easy moves. Oh, Black.
Was that a blunder?
Makes a blunder, but why is this a mistake? It looks very natural. Trying to eliminate one of White's bishops. The bishops are the only pieces that stop Black's pawns. It looks like a very logical move to me. But maybe this is the refutation.
It's so nice because it's all about the intermezzo. If you take that bishop on c4, White will not recapture the rook, but go bishop takes e3 with a check.
Key moment, he had. And here we go. White simply takes that Black rook. White's rook. Remember, rooks behind pass pawns, they control everything, and suddenly Magnus's queenside pawns will run. Black is too slow in this race.
And Maxime knows it. He looks away. It has been an up and down roller coaster game, but I think the ride is coming to an end now for Maxime. With the f pawn stopped by the rook, nobody's going to stop the pawns on the queen side. And Magnus there shaking his head.
It's the win. Maxime resigns.
Wow, we have the first decided game in the winner's final. Magnus takes the win. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Oh, he's playing some great chess today, but in this one, he did lose to Magnus Carlsen. Was it inaccuracy then for Maxime that has been so good today? It was just a very complicated game, and either side could have gone wrong at any moment, but the last blunder did come from Maxime, and we saw him there on the screen. He didn't just leave. He's actually checking what went wrong. It was a complete roller coaster, David.
It was a fascinating game, a really unique game. You nearly never get that type of position, that type of material imbalance, and I just want to show that final mistake. It was going to be a game decided on who made that last error, and right now, just 2-3 moves before the end, it was Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. He could have brought the Black rook in, trying to promote next move, using both Black rooks to force that pawn through to promotion, and the evaluation was roughly level. Maybe he could have held a draw here, but he brought his rook away off the open file, and he had missed that Magnus could now sacrifice his bishop for these Black pawns. Rook takes bishop, trying to promote next move, was met by the really accurate intermediate move. Bishop takes pawn, check. And here Maxime resigned. Rook takes pawn is threatened. If he tries to defend, then the White King simply marches over, dislodges the Black rook, and the White rook just in time to take the remaining Black pawn.
They are giving us some incredible entertainment in this winner's final, Maxime and Magnus. And now Magnus is in the lead after 3 games, only 1 rapid game to go, and that's going to be must win for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave to take it to Armageddon. The drama continues after a break.